My life went in a direction from the age of 6 until now, that was all due to what happened to me when I was 6. My name is Eddie Howarth. Here in Thailand, there's nobody like me. There was no such thing as a professional European clown. We've come from Ompang today, and we've crossed out of Thailand into what's known as the Karen State, which is a kind of autonomous region between Thailand and Burma. No roads. The roads are really rough, really tracked. When we get to these kind of places, it's like stepping back in time. There's a small stage at this end. It goes up a little bit. People have no electricity. There's no mobile phone signals, no internet. It's a pretty hard life for these people. When I go up country, I put a costume on, and it's usually one that's not going to frighten the little kids to death. Because it's very frightening for a little kid if you just suddenly appear in front of him with a great big nose and great white eyes and a silly hat and big shoes and all the rest of it. I washed up in Thailand in the year 2000 when I was given some work as a guest entertainer at a big bash being held at the British Embassy in Bangkok. That stage of my life I was pretty messed up. Basically I was an alcoholic. My life back in the UK was just an ongoing disaster. And I suppose I was looking for something, anything, just to stop me from going mad. I could see these opportunities were there in Thailand, and I was a free man. And I realised that the light at the end of the tunnel might not be in Britain anymore. And I thought, why not? But I was leading a pretty debauched life, shall we say. You know, I was enjoying the flesh pots and all the rest of it in Bangkok. Spending my money and that. Believe me, when the money starts to run out, this is not a good country to be in. Everybody wants your money. If you're not earning much, which I wasn't, then there's nothing down for you. People were saying, oh, can you come and do Johnny's little birthday party? And I thought, I've never done a birthday party in my life. I don't know, kids' parties and stuff. You know, hello, boys and girls. You know, no, not me. And I've still never done that. But I did slowly develop a kind of show routine that worked quite well for birthday parties. But I still couldn't break free from this debauchery, you know, and drinking and all the rest of it. I'd spent now a good number of years of my life drinking too much and so on. So it was a bit difficult, you know, balancing the two things. There I was being a professional children's entertainer, and as soon as the show was finished, I was throwing alcohol down my neck. I hadn't started a fresh new life in Thailand like I intended to. I just brought all the misery with me. I was born in the cotton mill town in 1952 in Manchester in the north of England. Filthy, filthy place with pollution everywhere, you know. Everybody had coal fires in those days. And the mill chimneys were belching out heaps and heaps of black smoke. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face in winter. It was that thick with acrid, horrible filth. My parents were good people, slightly misguided in that they believed that working 12 hours a day each was going to benefit the family. This small house that we lived in, we call them back-to-backs, or two up and two down, occupied by my two older half-sisters, my mother and father, and then my younger sister who came along. So that was quite a big family to live in such a small place. It wasn't unusual for children to be left alone for long periods. As I was a year and a half older than my sister, I ended up being the surrogate parent to her. Bear in mind, I was only 5 or 6, an age when I probably needed parents. I needed people to be around. I see kids in Thailand who are much the same as I was, little kids caring for the younger brothers and sisters because the parents have to work scraping around, making a living just to keep a roof over their heads. And I know what that's like. And I know how vulnerable those kids are. When I think about it, it's probably those very early years in that small terraced house when I first started to become vulnerable. I was a normal 6-year-old boy, and before I got to become a 7-year-old boy, I'd lost everything. The vulnerability was clear to one particular man. He lived directly opposite where I lived. in the same kind of house. This man had been in the First World War. He'd been a soldier in the First World War, and he was bedridden. In those days, if anybody wanted any help, if they couldn't help themselves, they'd shout through the window. If they need the toilet, they can't get out of bed. And that's how this man enticed me into his place. I don't think he'd ever had a bath. If he had, it must have been a long time ago, years ago. There was no such thing as showers in those days. People were dirty, filthy. Kids, men, women. We didn't have facilities. You couldn't keep clean like now. Everybody stunk of stale urine and worse, Well, you can imagine, what people refer to as oral sex. For a 6-year-old boy on a man who's not had a bath or cleaned himself for months. When that man started doing what he did to me, of course, he did what all paedophiles do. He said, "You must never tell a living soul about what we've just done. And if you do, I'll kill you." When you're abused as a child by men, it does affect you for the rest of your life, in that you never seem to be able to find your own sexual identity. When I was young, I experimented to make, see if I was homosexual or not, and discovered I wasn't. And I went through my entire adult life and always trying to impress any woman that I was with, whether I was married to or girlfriends or not, about my ability to be good in bed, as it were. It took me years to come to the conclusion that I did come to, that I don't need to prove to anybody that I'm a normal sexual being. But nevertheless, just being a man of a certain age in Thailand, not being married, and not having a Thai girlfriend, a lot of people just assume that I'm some kind of sexpat rather than a normal expat. And of course, working with vulnerable children, people do think, what's he up to? What's that man doing with those children? And they do assume the worst. There's not a lot I can do about that. Quite often I can recognise a paedophile when I see one. And I do come across quite a few in this country. It's a funny thing, it's well known that paedophiles can spot a vulnerable child in a crowd of 50 kids. And they'll say, that one's okay, I've got to go for that one. I think people should be aware of what it means to be abused by a paedophile. What it actually means, the gritty, nasty, horrible bits of it that people tend not to talk about, because it is hard, it's too hard, it's horrible, but it's real. That's why I'm well up inside, and I get... It's still real. I'm 65 years old, and that happened to me when I was 6. And that was only the first of many, many years to come of similar things, and worse, in fact, a bit later. I was 8 years old when we moved to another town, and I was so relieved. I thought that was the end of the nightmare, but I was wrong. It wasn't. The abuse started again with a new man. And with this one, it went on until I was about 12. So that was years of abuse with that particular man. Now, he was the first one to actually penetrate me. And I think I would have been about 9 then when that happened. And he did it slowly. He didn't. Well, it is rape, but he didn't sort of violently rape me there and then all in one go. It was like regular visits, and he had some, I never saw it, but I felt it, some kind of cold metal device that he used to stick up there and make it big enough for him to get in. The pain of that, it's just this overwhelming agony that overpowers you completely, totally paralyses you. He used to do French kissing, you know, tongue right down the throat business. And the smell of the nicotine, the beard, you know, the like stubble that he had. I was a child and he was a man. I've got a few pictures that I kept from when I was at school. In those days, I thought I was a pretty good artist, actually. But I think I was the only one that did think I was a good artist. Certainly the teachers didn't encourage me. In fact, all they could say about me was, and it's in the reports, that I was lazy, uncontrollable, generally just a load of trouble. And they were right, I was trouble. I ran away from home and school, absolutely no qualifications whatsoever. Everything to do with school was totally beyond me. It was like, why am I here? What's this all about? And I think I'm pretty sure it was all down to me not being able to read and write properly and not being able to follow anything, because I was dyslexic. But dyslexia hadn't been invented then. Sad, but nobody knew. Teachers didn't think about dyslexia. I'd become a very good car thief. I could steal any car you wanted. I even stole a Rolls Royce once. Anyway, I got caught. I ended up in prison for a while. Came out a reformed character, no more car thieving. I married very young. I just turned 20 when I married. She was 21, she was a bit older than me. Within 9 months, we had our first child, a girl. And then later we had another child, a boy. And we had a mortgage, we had a little house and everything. But I had a very unhappy marriage, and she did as well. I'd become a very keen motorcyclist, and I'd even got to the point where I was riding some very fast machines. I thought nothing of doing 150 miles an hour on this motorbike. Life was cheap for me. I didn't have any real deep meaning. But eventually, on one of the long-distance tours that I used to do on motorbikes, I had a terrible accident. No, I nearly died. It was a serious accident. I had compound fractures of my left leg, many other injuries, ribs, arms, head, you know, a fractured skull. I was in a coma for a long time. I've been very lucky to keep the leg, because we were going to chop it off when I had the accident. All of this pain and hassle for these last 40 years, it's still not stopped me from riding motorbikes. I just love it. I wear these clowny type socks because they're nice and tight, and I prefer them to the surgical stockings that the doctors keep telling me I should wear. I think these are just as beneficial myself, but it makes me look like a clown. Oh, that's what I am. Following the accident and me released from hospital and being registered disabled for a few years, it became very clear to me at the time that this was a life-changing event, and it turned out to be just that. I'd lost my job because of the disability. By then, relationships between me and the wife had deteriorated to a great extent, and in turn that led to me losing contact with my children. I lost everything, really. So this is how I started as a clown, as an entertainer. This is a toy, but I still use this in the shows. But I started as an entertainer playing the squeeze box because it was just about the only thing I could do when I was disabled, and I needed to make a living. I went out on the street making money doing that. I became quite good at it, and eventually that led me on to other things in the entertainment, and I became a professional clown. During the course of that period, I became a very, very serious drinker, and I was using drugs. I was in a terrible mess. I was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning in this basement bar underneath this flop house, doss house, call it what you will. And I probably would have died in that place if it hadn't been for the lady who became my one and only true love in this world. That's Charlie. She was a very good juggler. She was standing on my shoulders juggling fire, and I was doing my bit. We did circus acts and appeared on TV, and all that kind of thing, circus stuff. It was only when I met Charlie that I realised that this could be the first proper relationship with someone who I really did love. I was immensely in love with her. When we got married and had a great life, did loads and loads of things together. It was wonderful. I had a wonderful life with her. For most of the time we were together. There's not many photos left because, well, I came to a point in my life where I was very depressed, and the alcohol got the better of me, and one thing and another, and I ended up getting rid of most of what I had. I wish I hadn't now. Throughout that relationship, I never actually learned how to treat her. I didn't know how to treat a woman. I didn't know how to treat another human being. I'd never learned how. I grew up as a victim, you know, and I survived, but very badly. I mean, I was a mess. When it came to a head and Charlie decided enough was enough, my entire world crashed. I was wrapped up in this world of devastation, misery and drunkenness and pathetic crying like a baby constantly and all that. I just couldn't cope with anything, and that's when I found myself standing on the wall going to jump in the River Mersey. The Mersey's a horrible, deep, fast-flowing, dark, black river. I mean, nobody should end their life doing that, but I wanted to. And there I was, and this old guy was walking past with his little dog, and he didn't even stop. He just said, with a strong Liverpool accent, "Aye, lad, don't do it." I suppose the reason I didn't end up jumping in the River Mersey at 3 o'clock in the morning that time was because of this young man, my son. I was a single parent to him, and he was a typical troubled teenager, causing me no end of mayhem and mess every day. When I was in a particularly bad place myself, and I couldn't cope with him. So, but nevertheless, I was responsible for him, and I think he was probably one of the main reasons that stopped me actually jumping in the river that night. One of the biggest regrets, I suppose, is I just wasn't a good father. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to be a parent. I'd never been a child. I'd lost my childhood, so what would I know about bringing up children? I didn't know anything about children. And I was a bad parent. I know I was. My daughter here, she won't speak to me anymore, and neither will my son. You know, I've not had contact with them for a long time. I suppose I'm not really your normal expat. I'm not hanging around in bars and bar girls anymore, at least. nor am I living on a big fat salary in a flash apartment. So it's neither the high life or the low life, really. I wouldn't say I've assimilated. In fact, I still don't speak Thai. I listen to BBC radio. I cook my own meals. If I do go out, I generally try to go to a restaurant that serves chips, French fries. But there's a lot of Thai ways I do take on. Like the house here I'm renting. There was a murder here in this place. The owner was murdered. The Thais are great believers in ghosts, so no one would rent this place because it was haunted. I knew I could probably get it dirt cheap, which is all very well, but then I knew that no Thais would come near it. Basically, I had to get the monks in from the local temple, and I had to pay them to get rid of the ghost. It was quite a big deal, actually. And not only had they blessed the house, they blessed all our vehicles as well. It was really quite good. I'm glad I did it. Just wish I could get rid of some of my own ghosts that easily. One good thing about my childhood, and there weren't many good things, my father used to insist that we went on holiday once a year. And we used to go camping. One year, when I was getting a bit older, my father decided we're going to go to the south of England. And we went to a very popular seaside resort town called Newquay. Now this event that I must tell you about is by far and away the most serious, dangerous thing that ever happened to me. Now I would have been definitely 12, I may have been 13, because my parents allowed me to wander off into the town alone. While I was in the town, I was approached by this man probably in his late 20s, I think, who quietly said to me, "Do you want to see some pictures of some naked women?" He said, "We can't look at it here, we've got to go in." And he led me to this cave on the beach. Nobody could see in this thing. And he set about raping me. He ripped all my clothes. I was totally naked. And he raped me anally, very hard, very forcefully, and held me round the mouth so that I couldn't scream and shout. I became extremely afraid, very, very frightened. I knew this would end in tears. This was different. This man was violent. He was very violent. All I remember about the final bit when I escaped was I managed to find a rock and hit him on the head with the rock, and that stopped him, and I ran. I know he didn't die, I wish he had. I live on my own, and I'm very happy like that, but it's nice to have my bits and bobs around. They're not just objects, they mean something to me. It's some deep-rooted subconscious thing that I don't understand, that I end up decorating my life with all this nonsense, really. When I first started I was a lot fitter than I am now. And I could do a lot more technical stuff, like the very high unicycle. I used to be pretty good on that, you know, I still got it, but I couldn't even think about getting on it now. I'm too fat, you know, I'm too old. But I've moved on to other things a bit more sedate. Still funny, that's all that matters. I still make them laugh, and that's the main thing. The red balloon. I've always had a red balloon. When I was in my early 20s and I saw this film, it's a French film, Ballon Rouge. For some reason, it did something in my mind, and I thought, oh, that's an amazing film. It made me cry. And I was a tough young 20-something-year-old man. This little boy who's about the same age as I was when I first started being abused. He's trying to find something. He's trying to grab hold of this balloon that's got a life of its own. I'm not a psychologist, but it's something to do with the fact that I lost my childhood when I was about that age, and I think I was trying to grab this balloon, try to get my childhood back. This movie has had quite a profound effect on me, you know. It's certainly had a lot to do with the kind of show that I do. Throughout the show, I'm offering the children a chance to grab the balloon, so they actually get what I never got. The turning point really came when people were suggesting that I start to do free shows for poor children in Thailand. Anyway, I started working in a couple of big orphanages in the slum area in Bangkok, and there was one particular place I did this big show for, I don't know, maybe 500 kids, little tiny things. And there was a whole group of about 40 of these kids, and they were being cared for by a very dear lady, an American lady, who said, do you know how happy you've made these children? And I said, well, I hope so, yeah. She said, well, no, it's very important. She said, all these children have got full-blown AIDS, and they weren't getting antiretroviral drugs in those days. And she said, a lot of these children won't be here this time next year. So that stuck with me, and I didn't immediately stop drinking and stop smoking and do that, but it did have an effect, and it made me start to think a bit more about someone other than me. I thought, I'm wasting something here, because I can actually do something, you know, for these poor kids. And that was the beginning of a brand new life-changing, mega life-changing time for me. When I decided to set up a registered charity in Thailand, I knew already that it was going to be difficult, but I didn't quite realise how difficult. I was very lucky. I found the right lawyer and I found the right people to help me, and it took about 5 years. There are hundreds of thousands of refugee families. The biggest refugee camps are all in the area that we go to. We're going to visit some schools right on the border with Thailand and Burma. The Thai Border Patrol Police are a kind of paramilitary force. They do a lot of pretty serious and dangerous work, stopping terrorism, drug smugglers and people trafficking. They also run schools in really isolated areas. The schools we're visiting are in the Hill-Tribe areas in southern Thailand, on the border between Thailand and Burma. Okay. We've come here today, quite a remote little school, and I completely forgot, it's a public holiday in Thailand today, so there's hardly any children at the school. So we've had to rustle up all the local villages. I've asked to bring all the adults and the old people as well, because they like seeing the show, they enjoy it, they have a great time. Plus we've got a load of clothes to give them, so hopefully we'll get a small crowd, maybe 50 people, to enjoy the show and accept all the goods we're giving them. I think everybody went home very happy at the end of the day. Great day. The children go to school and spend all day being given a Thai education, and then they go home to a sort of traditional life in a Hill-Tribe village. These families don't think of themselves as Thai or Burmese. That's just lines on a map as far as they're concerned. At this particular school, they seem to have built the stage area in the hottest place possible, so that anybody coming on stage is bound to collapse of heat exhaustion in minutes. I don't put all the makeup on before I go on stage, because it's part of the act for me to put the red nose on when I actually get on stage. And I do that because it's not only is it a tradition in the circus, the clown used to sit in the ring and very slowly apply the makeup while the families and the children especially were coming in, so the children could see the transformation. Well, I do a similar thing here, but I do it a lot quicker, and then go on stage, and it's one of the first things in the show. I put the red nose on. I don't actually wear a big red nose in Thailand because it's so hot. Like in here right now, it's approaching 40 degrees centigrade. The glue doesn't stick very well in this heat. So if I put the big red nose on, within 5 minutes it'll be falling off. Some of the children that I entertain appear to be afraid in the beginning simply because they've never seen anything like it before, and they're not sure what to make of this man doing these silly things in front of them. And when, within minutes usually, they start laughing, and then they get right into it, and they have a whale of a time. It gives them a moment in life that they've never had before, where they can just like relax and enjoy what's happening. The happiness side of things, the shows, the things that make them laugh and make them happy, nobody can steal that. They've got that for the rest of their life. I'm not doing it in return for anything. I'm not asking them to worship my God or anything like that. I'm not asking them to do anything in return. I'm simply giving it to them because it's good for them, and it's good for me to do that. The happiness that I give them, that they can retain. And the day when they were rolling about, literally rolling about on the floor, laughing, jumping for joy. They're not going to forget that. And that's something they can fall back on when times are hard, when they get old. In the quiet moments, they're going to be able to think, oh, that was a good day when that fat bloke came from Bolton, made me laugh. And that's a wonderful gift for me to be able to give to people. And it's a wonderful thing for me to get. I think if I was able to go back in time and see myself as a child, I thought about giving myself some advice. I think I'd probably say, go along the path It's not going to be nice. It's going to be very frightening. It's going to be dangerous. But at the end of it, there'll be happiness. Given the opportunity, I just want to say to anyone seeing this that, number one, you know, it doesn't have to mean jumping off the roof for anyone who's suffered the kind of abuse. I nearly did. I'm glad I didn't. I'm really glad I didn't. I came through it. But the most important thing I want to say here is to those people, mainly men, and there are women as well, but mainly men, those men who are sat there watching this now, who might entertain the idea of enjoying themselves in a sexual way with a child, whether it's a boy or a girl, mark my words, what you do to that child is going to stay with that child until that child is my age, 65, and beyond, if they live that long. They will never forget. You're an adult and you should not touch children. Simple. Don't do it. The Red Balloon. It's a story of lost childhood regained. And it's probably the story of my life.